Hi, everyone. Come on into our Zoom room. No pushing or shoving or what everyone else is doing in movie theaters, like what are they looking at talking on their phones and throwing food and everything. We behave here at Post Break. As always, the archive of all these post breaks, over 60 post breaks, live on the Post Alliance website now, accessible to members and non-members. Lots of great learnings on there. So I encourage everyone to watch those. And we have 4 or 5 episodes leading up to today's topic about AE workflows and turnover. Some of our best and most popular episodes. So I recommend checking those out. Please drop questions you have in the group chat, and today's panelists can answer them as we go. And with that, welcome to Post Break. My name is Chris Peterson. I'm head of innovation at the Post New York Alliance and a consultant at Dungeon Beach Post in Brooklyn. Today's topic is advanced AE turnover techniques. Today's moderator is a picture editor and assistant editor. His credits include Gabby Giffords' Won't Back Down, Blind Trust, The Loneliest Whale, The Search for 52, Before You Know It, and he also works for CBS Sports and News Nation. Please give a warm welcome to Karl Marxer.
Hello, glad to see everyone here. We have a very special guest, Jared Simon. He's an editor and assistant editor. Some of his credits include Ad Astra, The Piano Lesson, Spaceman, The New Mutants, Antebellum, Chevalier, and Come From Away. He frequently works with editors John Axelrad and Leslie Jones. Jared earned a BFA in film editing from the School of Visual Arts here in New York City, and he's currently in Los Angeles. He wrote the book Every Frame Counts. And so we want to talk to him about that. There's some interesting things here. So, Jared, he has a brief presentation for us, and we'll do question and answers after.
Indeed. Let me share my screen. Hopefully this works. This is the first time I've done the overlay view. I just want to thank everyone at PNYA for having me, and I think it's really cool to be able to connect with the community and share some of the stuff that I think is interesting. It's part of my day-to-day life as an assistant editor, and I'm very curious to see how, I mean, this book was published in April, and so it's still pretty nascent, and I'm excited to see how it affects people's workflows, and if it helps people, I hope it does. So I'm not here to sell books. It feels very weird. The whole being an author thing is something that I never anticipated, never sought out. And I'll talk a little bit about that, but it's really more so to again, connect with the community and share some of the things that happen to be in the book. This is a QR code to my website where you can read more about it, some frequently asked questions. And again, just to introduce myself a little bit more, everything that Karl said is accurate and true. I am an editor and assistant editor. I went to school at SVA in New York. I miss the city dearly, and it's hard to believe that I've been in Los Angeles for a decade now. I mostly work in feature films. I know I'm probably blocking my, credits, but that's okay. And I think just on a personal level, I'm interested in how things work. I like not just knowing why, not just knowing how, but why. I think that it informs the process. And I mean, I remember in school, I didn't even know that assistant editing was a job. I was studying to be an editor as far as I was concerned. So, as soon as I started assisting, I realized there was so much to learn, and in so many different ways, some tangible, some intangible, some of the political aspects, which I touch on a little bit in the book, but those are the kinds of things that you can really only get from being in the environment. Although one of the greatest compliments that I've received so far is that the book is like having a mentor in your pocket, which is from John Axelrad, who I've worked with many times and hope to many more. So I took a lot of notes because I can't remember everything. And that's where the book comes in, because they started out as my notes, and the editors I was working with, along with Robert Iveson, the head of the editing department at AFI, invited me to lecture at the school, and then suggested that I publish my notes. And I jokingly said, I can't read, you shouldn't let me write. But he encouraged me. And he introduced me to some people at Routledge, and that was reassuring to me because they have peer reviews. So it wasn't just me being like, look what I wrote, I think this is important. It was peer reviewed, and other people were like vetting it and saying, you know, before they even greenlit the book, and then when I was in the manuscript phase too. So I kind of view this whole thing as a byproduct of the career path that I'm on. Like if I happen to write another book, cool, but my goal is to be a picture editor, and it's something that I'm very passionate about, something I really enjoy, and something that the people that I've been working with have championed me, and I'm very grateful for that. So to that end, something I'm also very passionate about is sharing stuff, right? I mean, that's why we're here today. That's why I'm pointing out that there's free stuff available for the book. There's student materials, they're on the website. If you go to Routledge's the book page, the student materials is a zip file. It contains every illustration that's in the book, which are screenshots, high resolution, full color. um it's got some checklists, things I would have found handy. It's got a template bin with a little Easter egg in there, and all of those are made by an assistant that I work with, Marco Gonzalez, who's excellent as well. And so it was really cool to be able to bring a bunch of people together that helped me make the book, because just like filmmaking, everything is a team sport. My name's on the cover, but like there's so many people who have helped me. So even if you choose not to buy the book, feel free to download this stuff, and I hope it helps. So this is some examples of things that are in the book, in the downloadable resources, and I think a great jumping off point for talking about how I handle, certain aspects of assisting. Two of these images are related to FileMaker, which I've been asked to speak on today. Specifically, FileMaker and AI were two topics of interest. So on the left, you'll see an ADR cue sheet. And again, we're going to get into how this document came to be, but that's a PDF generated from FileMaker. And it's just clean. It's just, I mean, that's what you're looking at. Started out as an Avid marker, and it's a formatted Avid marker. And I think that presenting clean, consistent paperwork it represents the cutting room well. And as a first assistant editor, that's, I think, part of my job is making sure, one, the editor and the director can work together unencumbered, unbothered, and then two, that communication is clear across departments. And so what better way to do that than by having clean, clear, consistent paperwork? On the ADR cue sheet, it's broken down by reel. Then you've got a character, the cue code, some time code, which again, I might be getting ahead of myself a little bit, but the time code comes from the marker, and then the footage that you see right above that is a calculation done within FileMaker to turn time code into footage, which the sound department generally likes to work with. Then you've got dialogue, and then over to the right, you've got the reason for recording the ADR. All those blue markings, those are annotations. So this is an example of an annotated ADR cue sheet, perhaps after an ADR session where you did 1, 2, 3 takes. 3 was a circle take, 4 was a circle take with a star because people liked it more. So moving clockwise, that's an image of a line script, and I'm sure many assistants who have worked in scripted narrative have had to make an Avid line script, and it's no small easy feat. It's getting easier, especially with the transcript tool, which is new, and it helped me very recently on a project. Just go back and forth between clicking on the transcript and then clicking and leaving a script mark, but all that's to say that there is Script Sync, which is Avid's, Script Sync AI, which analyzes the phonetic index that it did alongside with your script text, and it'll mark like every single line, which you want to maintain a signal to noise ratio, right? And when, as an assistant, you want to place yourself in the shoes of the editor and ask yourself, if I were them, what would I want? Do I want a bunch of script marks, or do I want like one script mark per 3 sentences, or go with the rhythm of the dialogue? And then there's color coding. So, I've got annotations on there, but like orange is what we've been using to denote that it's a group clip, because right now there's no real easy way in the script to delineate single angles from group clips. So by coloring the top and the tail orange, it's just a visual indicator to the editor that, hey, if you double click on this, there's more than one angle. We've been using magenta, for example, to indicate ranges that are out of order. Maybe, they said the line in the wrong place, but we're still going to script it in that area. Just know that it'll jump you to a different place in the script. And then green, we've been using for improvised lines, stuff like that. Then I've got a screenshot of a bin, and there are annotations in there, and there are some things that look like annotations, but they're actually in the bin. So those little tabs, the pink and the green, those are it's a little hack that I've kind of I picked up along the way, where those are sequences. And the sequence is comprised of 2 video tracks. On video track 1, I have a piece of media. I think it's title media or just something blank that I apply a color effect to, and I change the hue of it. So I've got a bunch of templates for a pink one, a green one, a blue one. And then on video track 2, I put subcap. And that means that all I have to do is duplicate the sequence, open the sequence, edit subcap, and then in thumbnail view in the bin, I can change the text and leave a little note, almost like a sticky note, for the editor. And I can, if I line it up in the right way, I can, make the bin look like this. And I find it to be very helpful when I want to leave, per clip notes that are a little bit more verbose. And then there's also poster frames like new footage and VFX note here, which are just duplicated master clips of, one image that I imported once. And again, it's all about clear communication, right? So if they shot part of scene 4 on day 1, and they're going to shoot the second part of scene 4 on day 2, on day 2, I'm going to open up the scene 4 bin, and I'm going to drag the new footage in, and I'm going to put a new one of those new footage clips between the two. That way the editor can see, oh, here's what was shot before, here was shot after. And then when they're done, they can delete the clip. Please don't delete the media. And then I have to restore the media if it's accidentally deleted, but things happen. And then I'm probably blocking it, so I apologize. I'll cover my camera for a second. That's the VFX tracker. This is another FileMaker layout. There's a lot going on in there, but in large part, it's a thumbnail, it's a shot code, a shot status, elements that comprise the shot, and then versions that have been submitted by the vendor. There are a lot of buttons in there, and a lot of those those buttons write scripts or flag certain things. And for those who are unfamiliar with FileMaker, just to make the rest of this talk easier, think about it as just one big Excel spreadsheet, or a series of Excel spreadsheets that all talk to each other. But it's certainly, it can be overwhelming. I say that because it still overwhelms me. I look at what I built and I get nauseous. So just know that you're not alone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about FileMaker specifically, and then we're going to also get into some supporting apps to be aware of, things that make assisting easier, or tools that have been on my radar. But FileMaker is one of the big ones that people get, I just get a lot of questions about it a lot. And the more I learn about FileMaker, the more I feel like I don't know about FileMaker because you open it and it's just like a blank screen, and the sky's the limit. And what I've learned is that FileMaker has a lot of answers, and what's really important is knowing what questions to ask of it. And the questions that I have chosen to ask of FileMaker have been informed through experience working in cutting rooms. It's like that whole work smarter versus harder thing. I mean, I was working harder for a while. I still work hard, but FileMaker allows me to focus that energy in the areas that I find more creatively fulfilling. It does the routine or rote tasks a little bit faster. And frankly, FileMaker, again, is just one of many solutions, and it's probably not the best solution for everybody. And who knows, especially with the way that the artificial intelligence tools are evolving so rapidly. We'll see what other tools emerge, but just a little bit about why I chose FileMaker, especially because if you're looking it up and you go, whoa, it's $600, that's expensive. Yeah, it is. but also when I work on a movie, usually the post house supplies a computer along with a host of software apps. And I noticed that FileMaker was just on the computers. And I remember when I started out, I remember saying, what kind of files does it make? What kind of files do I need to make? I make an MOV file, and that's about it. So it was on the computers, and it was there, and I didn't know what it was. And then I was interviewed for a movie that I mean, I ended up not getting the job, and I felt that the reason I didn't get the job was because the assistant who was interviewing me was asking me a lot if I had a database and if I had if I knew how to track VFX. And I said, yeah, I know how to track VFX, but I don't have a database. And I remember saying, I'm quick to learn, and I'm happy to use. If you have one, I'll use it. I'll learn it. And they ended up going with someone that they had worked with before. So it made me feel a little bit better about it. But it also lit a fire under my butt to go and learn FileMaker, because it just seemed like something that would have given me an edge in that interview. Two things stood out to me very quickly. When I started learning FileMaker using the IATSE training and trust fund. So they have access to LinkedIn Learning, and it's a really dry course. It's great. Chris Hippolyte, I think, is the author of it, and he does a wonderful job. But he spends an awful lot of time talking about customers and products and invoices and line items. And I'm sitting there rolling my eyes, going, "How does this relate to editorial or filmmaking at all? And what do these people see in FileMaker? What could they possibly be doing, related to visual effects?" And once I abstracted some concepts like, a customer could be a character, and an invoice could be an ADR queue sheet, things started to make a little bit more sense. And that's why, even sessions like today where we get to talk about this and I get to share how I've been using it, it might, get the ball rolling and the gears turning in your head, and you go, oh, that's how he's using it. I can make it do this, and you can bend it to your will. And what I'm partially blocking probably is an excerpt of a script, it's a script within FileMaker that allows me to create EDLs from metadata that I've imported from the dailies. And that could easily be an entire 30 to 45 minutes worth of talking about loops, if statements, and else statements. Just for the record, I kind of draw the line personally at this FileMaker scripting stuff. I think Python scripting is really interesting. I have friends who have dived into it. I cannot. I just can't. I just can't. There are only so many hours in a day. So, I know people who code like really, and some people look at this and they call it code. And is it? Probably, but I don't know. I feel like what I've built is held together by Scotch tape. So even though it's not, it's more robust than that. But I'm sure that anyone who writes code feels that way to some extent, or at least when they start out. Anyway, much like the book, I viewed the database that I built and all my FileMaker work as a byproduct of the real goal. The two things that stood out to me about FileMaker in particular were layouts and scripts. We saw two layouts before. We saw a layout of an ADR queue sheet, which is a layout that I designed. It's 8.5 by 11, so it's a piece of paper, and it's a print layout. So it was designed with the intention of a workflow of being able to lay data out on it that how I wanted to look at it on a piece of paper, and then print it. Whereas the VFX tracker is a completely different layout. And that, again, it's still looking at data on a spreadsheet, but I'm organizing it in a specific way, a way that makes me feel like less of an accountant looking at a spreadsheet and more like I'm interacting with a program that has pretty colors. So scripting is the other thing that stood out to me, because, when I had used Google Sheets in the past, at the time, there was no way to automate things. And again, this little excerpt of this script that I wrote, it's a way of telling FileMaker, just do this, then this, then this. So anything that you manually do in FileMaker, you can then script. So if you find yourself doing something routinely, you probably want to script it and then add it to a button. So some possible alternatives are Airtable, Notion, Google Sheets. Personally, I've only used Google Sheets. I've heard a lot about Notion. I've heard a lot about Airtable, a lot of great things. The one hurdle that I find myself running into is that studios typically are, understandably, and I support content security big time. You know, we need to make sure that nothing leaks. To that end, we cannot be uploading, you know, still images or details about the film, the project, to online, you know, hosted platforms. So what's great about FileMaker is it stays local, it stays secure. They do have a server option, you know, FileMaker server. I actually haven't used that. I've hosted it off of my own machine. So it's really a tool that I use and that I share with other assistants locally, you know, over the private network, so that we can, you know, and they have usernames and passwords. So just long story short, it's secure. And in summary of FileMaker, it is one big but one legitimate example of an extension of myself. Other extensions of ourselves and the software include the Boris suite of apps, this new very exciting tool called Marvin Jr., which uses the Avid SDK panel, and Isotope RX, which I use a lot. I don't know that Isotope officially supports Media Composer as a host, but I think it's because they prioritize Pro Tools. I don't know for sure, but I know that it works in Media Composer, and it has been, I've been using it for as long as I've been in the industry, and it has led to some very clean dialogue tracks. And I'm sure a lot of people have used, you know, I think they have like 4 essential plugins, but like using the spectrograph and what's called RX Connect is, you know, to be able to, you know, it's like Photoshop for audio, incredible. So, let's talk about these extensions. And again, these are just examples. Some of them happen to use AI, most of them don't. And some of them you might be familiar with. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with Frame.io, that's in the bottom left. You know, review and approval. I use it. I tend to see it a lot on lower budget projects. Not to say that it can't be used on larger budget projects. It just seems to be more cost effective, especially in comparison to Pix, which is probably the biggest competitor and used predominantly. Evercast and Looper are similar, you know, in that way, where they both allow you to take a video signal from Avid and then feed it into this Zoom call, for example, as its own entity. And I've used Evercast a lot. I tested out Looper. I think it's neat. Boris FX makes well, they make more than 3 great suites, but 3 common bundles that I see are the Continuum, Boris Continuum, which, you know, a bunch of, I'm sure everyone on this call knows everything I'm talking about with Boris right now. We're all Boris fans. Sapphire and Mocha, which is far and away my favorite, you know, tool to use for masking, rotoscoping, tracking. I mean, every screen and sign that we all see, right? And we're just like, can we please use Mocha? Marvin Jr. is very exciting to me. That, I believe, started out its life as a FileMaker database, and it's evolved significantly to the point where, you know, right below it, you can see this is what it looks like in Avid. They've integrated it using Avid's SDK panel, so that you can batch edit markers, which is something we're about to talk about, because a lot of the interop between Avid Media Composer and any of the tools that I'm using, specifically FileMaker, rely heavily on markers, and whether those markers are being passed into FileMaker via an EDL or via an exported marker list. I need to format markers and I need to batch edit markers very frequently. So Marvin Jr. is a very exciting new welcome addition. Bouncing to the center, Jumper is, again, a tool that I'm aware of. I haven't used it yet. Very exciting. Again, uses the SDK panel. And it uses AI to analyze video clips and locally on your machine. Excuse me. And it opens up semantic search into Avid, which, I mean, I don't think that replaces a person, but I certainly think it expedites the process of finding footage. For example, in this screenshot, you know, from, I think, their website, it's someone typed in shark, and so it pulled up every piece of video that it identified seeing a shark in. That's not to say you shouldn't watch your footage or that the assistant shouldn't, you know, review all the footage. Of course not. But in a pinch, this helps make sure fewer things fall through the cracks. Maybe there's another shot in another scene that has something that we could use. I mean, it's just like when you open FileMaker for the first time and it's like a blank slate. All of this is so nascent, like so many opportunities and possibilities exist that it's overwhelming to think about just what those possibilities are. Flawless AI is something that I saw a demo of at Edit Fest a few weeks ago. I was aware of them as a company. What they're doing is, the pejorative term is deep faking, but they're doing this in a way that is really, really thoughtful. And I would encourage you to look, if you're interested, look up, their website, their videos, their demos. It will allow you to modify and change a performance, not just on a temp level, but you can follow it all the way through the pipeline. And they've, through their presentation at EditFest specifically, I was very impressed with how they're handling the ethical side of generated video, audio. I mean, with great power comes great responsibility. And if we're going to be able to generate video of someone saying anything, or any angle of them, that shouldn't be taken lightly, and they're not taking it lightly. So it's very cool to see how AI is being integrated into the tools that we're using. And then just kind of nestled down here at the bottom center is 11 Labs, which ironically I have not used, but literally 40 minutes before this meeting right now, I was just, asked about the possibility of using it on a project, and I said, okay, yeah, let's look into it. If everyone is on board and everyone is aware, I think the easiest way forward is transparency. But it's certainly a gray area right now, and I think that on the subject of AI, at least as it relates to tools that we're using, and again, we'll come back to this because I want to come full circle. It's just about being mindful about it and being aware. So let's see what's next. So going back to those markers that we were talking about, this isn't elegant, this isn't pretty, but it's one method, and it's something that I've been using effectively. And if it works, great. I'm always open to new ways of working, new methodologies. And what we're going to do is we're going to follow just quickly what my methodology is, how it gets from being an Avid marker. This is an ADR line as an example. So this is, just like that ADR cue sheet that we showed earlier. This is how it begins life. And I'm also going to show, as an example, demonstrate why you don't necessarily need FileMaker. You could do it on your own. You could do it using any tool that you deem necessary, you deem appropriate or fitting. So my ADR markers contain a number of fields, but in a marker in Avid, I only have one field, and it's the comment, right? So what I'm doing is I'm using equal signs as delimiters. So the 6 fields that I have are a tag, which is empty. Then I have ADR, which is a classification. We've got the character name. In this case, it's Jared. And then the dialogue line, which is, yes, I'm putting these hours on my time card. Can you tell that I made this after a union meeting? After that, there is a reason for the ADR line. Then there's a note for the ADR line, like, for the ADR technician saying, mute the temp on A3 before looping. Then we've got the Q code, if there is one, and then a little end tag just to make sure that the whole marker came through, because if you format if it happens to come through an EDL, or if the text gets clipped and it doesn't see equals end, it flags it. So I export a marker list, and I open that. What you can do is you can open that up in a text editor. What I have set up is that I'll export, a marker list, import that into FileMaker, and FileMaker is about to do what I'm about to explain. It does it very quickly, and it puts everything into its appropriate place. What I did in the text editor was I did a search for equals, because equals comes up very rarely in ADR, right? Seldom does anyone, even if they're saying the word equal, you write it out, right? So it's a pretty safe delimiter to use. Whereas a very common delimiter that people use are a comma. Commas happen pretty frequently in spoken dialogue. So if I used comma separated value list, then this wouldn't be so effective. So hence the equal signs. So if I do a search for a Command F for equals, and then I just hit the return key on my keyboard, I end up with a value list. And value list is a FileMaker term, but where you can see value 1 is empty because there was nothing before that first equal sign. Then value 2 is the classification. Value 3 is the character. 4 is the dialogue line, so on and so forth, right? You can use Microsoft Excel to do this. You could use Google Sheets, I'm sure, to do this. So you don't have to use FileMaker, right? But here is one creative way. Again, did I come up with this? No, I inherited this from working, in John Axelrod's cutting rooms. And we've added other fields. We've brought it into, I think it started with just ADR lines, but then we brought it into DI markers, into VFX markers. Anywhere where we need to have, content-rich comments and keep them throughout the flow of editorial, because again, on a feature film specifically, we're thinking on a macro scale, right? If we're going to live with something, we want to make sure that if we leave a marker during dailies, we can carry that through to the very end with integrity and make sure that we don't lose any data. So, wrapping up here, the state of the industry, where are all the jobs at? People always ask me, Jared, where are all the jobs at? I have no idea. I actually, I wrapped on my last union show about a year and a half ago, and it's been pretty quiet. I'm working currently, and the show that I'm on happened to just turn union, which is fantastic, but it's been slow and it's been challenging out there for everyone. And I can only offer observations as an individual, and I don't feel like I have very much authority, but I, just as someone working in the field, I'm happy to share what I've been thinking. So just, I remember back in 2018, 2019, it seemed like there was a boom in production. There was a lot of short form content. I remember Quibi was a big deal. It was like, I just remember everyone I knew was working on a Quibi show, like, and it was a big production. Like, it was like, they had to do the landscape and the portrait, and and then they had to format it for when it wasn't going to be on Quibi. So there was a lot of work to be done, and it seemed like everyone and their mother was working on a Quibi show. And then the pandemic hit, and we all lived through that, so it slowed everything down. But they started to boom again once we figured out how to do our job safely. Slowly more people started to re-enter the workforce, and then the strikes and negotiations halted us again, I think, in 2023. And I think there's been a rise of remote work, which I think has its advantages and disadvantages. For me personally, I think that having it as an option, making it has increased the quality of life. I think it's also given people who don't live in areas that were previously considered hubs, like Los Angeles and New York and Atlanta. It gives people not in those areas opportunities to work on content that they wouldn't have maybe been able to previously. I also think that it might lead to people who live in those high cost of living cities to have difficulty finding work. So that's challenging. I think that an overarching question that I find myself asking is, what do people want to watch? And I think maybe the studios are, I mean, I'm sure that they're always thinking about that. That's driving, the decisions about what they greenlight and what they don't. And as assistant editors, this is so far above our pay grade, but it does affect us, right? I mean, when we're talking about budgets, the disparity is pretty big right now. I mean, the budget determines and dictates what resources we have, and resources include positions, and that's how many people we're working with, which goes back to, where are all the jobs? So from observation, it seems like people, I concerningly want to watch themselves. That's why we have a lot of YouTube content, a lot of TikTok content, a lot of, I think, what's considered user generated content, and why I've heard that a lot of kids want to be influencers. So, like, that's a career goal of theirs, which is interesting to me. Not a judgment, just, an interesting observation, because if it goes back to the question of what do people want to see, and what's being made, how much of it is being made. So is artificial intelligence taking my job? I don't know. I don't know. Yes and no. I think that it's going to make us more efficient. I think it's going to make us more efficient assistants, which in many ways is good, right? Because it reduces a lot of the mental drag that might come with doing things that are routine and, dare I say, boring, and frees us up to do more creative work. But again, I'm seeing this disparity between, we have a lot of big budget, blockbusters, $200 million, and then a lot of low budget indie films. So those big budget movies are always going to have, probably, likely, I'm not gonna say always, but again, all opinion, this is all conjecture. I think they're always going to have a larger crew and multiple assistants, and that's great because I'm a big proponent of mentorship and on-the-job training. And I think that being an apprentice or a second assistant is a great way to learn from a first assistant editor on the job. Um, pendulum swing to the other side. I do think that on the smaller budget side of things, where you've got your 10, 15, $20 million movies, I think that they're gonna end up going with one editor and one assistant, which is, upsetting to me. But for multiple reasons. One, I like the camaraderie. I like hanging out with my coworkers and collaborating. And especially when you're working remote, you're kind of siloed alone. So there are ways around that, of course. Like, you could get on FaceTime with someone all day every day, which I've done, when working remotely, and it makes the day go faster. But is artificial intelligence taking our jobs? Yes and no. It's going to make us more efficient, and I think what's most important is putting it in context, like we did earlier, by exploring how it extends our capabilities and how it gets integrated into Avid. And last but not least, I'm always asked for advice, and so the two things that I come back to are something that was shared with me very early on. It was when I first moved to Los Angeles. Another assistant said to me, "Don't try to be the smartest person in the room, just try to be the most helpful." He goes, "You might have the right answer. You might be sitting in the room with the editor and the director, and someone asks a question, you know the answer to it. It might not be the best time to share it. So maybe you want to just keep it to yourself and share it later." And the other thing is that even with today's presentation and with all of the resources that are in the book and in every online forum, and even that FileMaker class, as I was mentioning, it's overwhelming. It can be, to see this large quantity of information and go, I have to know all of this stuff. I think it's not about knowing everything, but it's knowing how to figure it out. And it's about critical thinking and problem solving and thinking outside the box. So hopefully that's sort of, again, this is my ethos. These are the things that I think about as an assistant editor. And I think that's my spiel. Carl, I think that's everything I've got.
All right. Well, that's really good. And we've
Oh,
actually
hopefully I
got
wasn't.
got a couple of questions. First, I want to say that your book, in our initial discussions, is really just a collection of how you do things. It's not the definitive way of doing things. It's just your notes and how you've done it. So, first question from Paul Lindquist. He wants to know, when using FileMaker Pro, if we need to learn coding, and if that would be a worthwhile thing to do. I think I want to add on to that question is, can you set up find macros by using Chat GPT to create the macros that would then go in?
I mean, I don't think there's a single downside to learning coding. Like I was talking about, for me personally, I draw the line at Python. I mean, in order to script in FileMaker, you do need to learn FileMaker scripting language, which becomes easy, with time. And I mean, you start learning certain functions and oh God, I'm forgetting some of the specific parlance, but the nomenclature. But in order to use FileMaker, I wouldn't say that you have to learn how to code or learn any specific language in particular. Python seems to be very popular. There are certainly ways to run shell scripts from FileMaker, which I know a lot of more advanced users than myself definitely take advantage of Python scripting, shell scripting. And I am sure that there are ways to integrate ChatGPT into it. Usually in my environments, I'm air gapped from the internet, so I don't have access. which again, there are resources out there for you to spin up your own private server that runs a large language model. And again, this is, I mean, it's such a great question because I think that that's exactly the mindset that someone needs to have in order to start finding solutions, because it's a lot of this stuff is tinkering. I mean, I did this FileMaker stuff because I thought it was interesting and neat and fun, and I liked problem solving. And you know, I could talk all day about it, but yeah, I'm sure that there are ways to extend FileMaker's usage. I think that even newer versions of FileMaker have some sort of AI built into them. I'm still running FileMaker 19, I think. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I think for me, the way I'll probably get started is just find examples that I can kind of cut and paste and build some stuff and experiment and try to get it. It always fails the first time, it seems like.
a huge part of it a huge part of it is the debugging process. I'll write a script and then it won't work, and then I go, great, and I got to click through it one at a time and figure out where I messed up in the script. But yeah, a great resource for that is Master the Workflow. It's Richard Sanchez and Larry Jordan. They sell a digital code book, which I'm a huge proponent of looking at that and seeing how another assistant works, because it'll inform the way that you choose to build your own database.
Cool. Yeah, while you're talking about the book, your book is available in paperback, maybe hardback too, but it's also available in digital form. And I think for me, it was convenient because I was traveling during the summer to have the book, but then I might put it on an iPad to have it as a resource. It's not really a first time through book and you're done. You got to read it 3 or 4 times to get everything. But there's a really good index in the back, which, if you got the online version, would be even easier to search. So if you need to get an answer to something really quick, you can type in and
Well,
look it up.
and to that point, there's a bunch of cross references, which I had to painstakingly go in. So it's in context of reading something. You can be reading something in the dailies chapter, and then there's a cross reference, and in the ebook, it's just a link to the page in the turnovers chapter about why this is important to set up in the dailies stage right now, because it's going to pay off down the road later. And again, with you, I mean, I wrote the damn thing and I'm taking notes in it, and I put stickers all over it, and it's something that I use. I do like the digital version because I can Command F and search for a term, but that was how it originated as well. It was a Pages document.
Yeah. So Jason Solog, I hope I pronounced your name right. He's asking questions about AI. With AI and automation, do you imagine they'll try to further reduce AE workforce size by having one AE for multiple editors if the same post super is on multiple shows? And if so, how do you imagine we could prepare for that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think we spoke a little bit about that, and I mean, I see it as a pretty big possibility. I think the best way to prepare for all this stuff, I mean, without worrying, because one of my favorite movies is Defending Your Life, that Albert Brooks movie with Meryl Streep. And I bring that up because the thesis of that movie is about not living your life in fear, and people are afraid of things they don't know. And there's so much that we don't know about AI and about how it's going to impact our industry, our jobs. And I think that I mean, by attending this today, by watching the recording of this, by being in tune with the tools that are available, I mean, heck, I just mentioned that I'm going to have to use 11 labs, I think, right? So I'm just learning. It's about for me, it's about approaching it with that innate curiosity of going, how does this work and how can I use it? And, then there's the ethical side of AI, of course. But I think that that's the best way to prepare. At least that's how I'm preparing myself for it, is I go, well, what tools are out there? That way, if I'm the only assistant editor on a project and I'm, requested to do something that previously would have taken me many, many hours, I could be like, wait a minute, if I have Marvin Jr., I could save a lot of time in formatting my markers, for example, right? But if I tune all of that out and I say, I put my head in the sand, I go, I don't want to know about this AI stuff. I'm afraid of it. I don't understand it. I don't want to play with it. again, keyword there is play. Like this it should be fun. Like I don't know about everyone else, but like I got into this because I think movies are cool. I think it's fun. I'm very fortunate that we get to do this for a living. So that's where I'm coming at it. All of this from is this sense of play.
Cool. Well, if anybody else has some questions, we'd like you to place them in chat. I've got a question that's a little bit off this total topic, but it's about finding work. And what are your feelings about IMDb? And do you subscribe or pay for IMDb Pro? I do. I don't know. I want to see what anybody else thinks about that.
I mean, me personally, I don't pay for IMDb Pro. I have I have friends who have IMDb Pro, and every week they will send me a screenshot of my star meter and their star meter, and they will have me guess whose is whose, and I do not like that game. Um, but as again as an assistant who's interested in moving into editing, I think that it might be something of interest for me as I, learn more about agents and, the role the agent plays in in the editor's life and career. Um, but currently I use IMDb when I'm watching a movie and I want to know who cut it and then who the assistants were and then see who they've worked with. And then I can text them and go, oh my God, I didn't know you worked on this. How fun. So.
Ah. Yale Urbach I hope I pronounced her last name correct. She wants to know what metadata are you tracking from dailies on a project? And I guess,
I don't know. Let's look at the book. I'm not even being facetious. I wrote it down because I can't remember. I mean, tape name is the most important one because that's usually the unique ID for everything. Where are we here? Should be the workflow call. Um, man, and I just went over how I'm like it's indexed and all that crap. Um, but yeah, tape name. I want as much lens data as I can, especially if they're using if they're using like the Zoe system, if I'm even saying that ZOE, but um I want I'm trying to find it. I don't want to waste everyone's time though.
well, and I
Anyway,
can add to that question, are you adding much metadata yourself to the files?
not typically. I mean, most of it is me checking that it's there because it should be there. I want to know. I mean, the thing that I've been working on most recently is actually trying to merge the script supervisor notes with the code book. So I'll take all of the metadata that comes across in the dailies bin, which is usually. Again, you got clip name, start and end time code, duration, which can be calculated regardless. But the tape name is the unique identifier. So a lot of the relationships in the database are formed from using the tape name and then the in and out time code as maximum and minimum ranges. And then there are calculations that FileMaker is doing under the hood to turn those time code figures from text, because that's technically what it is. Time code is in the context of FileMaker. Time code is text. It is not a number. And so there's a calculation that runs that turns that time code into an integer that is a single number that represents that time code, even if it's like 12 hours, 22 minutes, and whatever, you get a big number, and that represents the time code. But what else am I tracking from there? Usually it's the script, not the scripts, or the dailies operator. It's funny, I haven't done dailies in a minute, which is why I wrote this. It started off as a dailies checklist. But yeah, if I've been working on importing an XLSX file from the script supervisor into its own table, and then finding out what the relationship is between the dailies metadata, which could be camera, scene, and take, along with the script supervisor's reports. And then I can have a layout that then shows me the metadata from the code book alongside the script supervisor's report, which can then lead to a third thing, which is a custom ALE generated by FileMaker, which can generate subclips with the script supervisor notes injected into a custom column so that the script supervisor notes are then searchable within Avid Media Composer.
And does FileMaker do time code calculations? Can you program it to do the subtract and
Oh yeah, it's not native. There are plugins. There are plugins that you could do, or you create your own calculations, which I kind of outline in the book a little bit. Again, some cursory Google searching will yield some pretty great results about just how to, what calculations other people have used and how to. I mean, the basic example of breaking time code down from time code into total number of frames is to use the function, I think it's left two. You get the hours and you separate that out and multiply it or divide it by 60. I'm not using the right terminology, but the people who are interested in this are going to be like, I understand what he's saying. You basically take hours, break it down into total number of frames, minutes, total number of frames, seconds, total number of frames, and then frames down into frames, right? And then you add all those numbers together and you've got that one calculation. You could do all of your calculations in frames, and then when you're ready to display time code again, you run the reverse of that, where you basically divide it by, hours, minutes, seconds, frames until you get your time code.
Okay. We have a question. I can't pronounce this name. I'm sorry. But regarding playing and learning all at once, I feel like editing definitely comes from repeated practice and doing it all the time. Do you have a set method you've built over years as far as creating objectives? And most of all, remembering all that you've learned.
I again remembering all I learned, it's like again, I can't remember. It's like it's all in here, right? But it's like I can't remember. I need something to jog my mind. That's why I like working with other people. That's why I wrote it all down so that I can go back and refer to my own notes. As far as creating objectives goes, yeah, I mean, for me, my North Star has always been editing. Excuse me. I've always loved the intersection of technology and movies, and editing is that crosshair. So that kind of guides a lot of my decisions in terms of where I want to focus my efforts and um, follow the things that I find interesting. I find myself when I'm working with assistants as well, like second assistants, I'll ask them what they're interested in, because that helps me help them. Like I've worked with assistants who are more interested in sound design than they are in visual effects. So I'll say, great, I'll handle the brunt of the VFX work. Why don't you work on sound designing this scene, or vice versa? So that way everyone feels like they're contributing on a meaningful level, or at least they are contributing on a meaningful level, and they also are getting that creative satisfaction that they need and that fulfillment at the end of the day. So that's how I've handled it from, I guess, a more managerial aspect. Personally, though, I've always just been self-motivated and driven, and also encouraged by the people around me. I've joked that I feel sometimes like one of those wind-up cars where you just have to place it and it'll go. And I've been fortunate to be surrounded by mentors and teachers and people in my life who see that energy and that desire to learn and that eagerness. And they just help point me in the right direction. And they know that I'm going to start running as soon as they let go of me.
So Christopher Francisco has a question. What aspects of VisFX do you feel an AE should be fluent in if asked to do a temp VFX shot? Also, are you accomplishing that in Avid via a plugin suite or After Effects or Flame
Yeah.
or
Um, yeah, I think I can get away with, I mean, the project I'm working on right now is relatively low budget, and so we have no extra tools. So I am limited to just plain old Avid, and I can get away with most any temp visual effect shot with 3D warp, animat, and paint tool, or the paint effect. And those three within Avid and just the regular old Avid tracker, I've been able to pull off some temps that even me, I sit there and I go, okay, I guess I'm done now. Like I do the shot. I thought there was going to be more work, and that's it. Um, but I do, when I can, leverage Mocha Pro and Primat from BCC Studio. Um, I when I got started 10 years ago, After Effects was my edge. I mean, it was part of the reason why I got hired on the first project that I did, was because I needed to know how to do motion graphics. There was a lot of texting back and forth, and they needed the messages on screen. And so that was my edge, was knowing how to use After Effects and create those graphics. It's still hard to do graphics within Avid. Tyler Plus got a huge upgrade recently, and I know that people have been burned in the past by Tyler Plus and the lack of the title tool. It's still it's still never going to be, you know, a full-fledged motion graphics suite the way that After Effects is, but it's remarkably capable now, and there's a lot that you can do with it if you get creative.
Cool. Jason asked another question, but I'm going to jump ahead and come back to it if we have time. Connor Callahan has a question, though. How do you approach project with footage that has different frames per second, like a documentary with old footage in it? How do you avoid problems down the line, especially when creating transcodes and proxies? Do you simply interpret the footage or something more?
It's a great question. I don't have the best answer because I generally, this falls out of my domain in features and scripted. In documentaries, I can't speak to it reliably. I wish I had like a really great answer. As far as I'm concerned with off-speed footage, we have a project frame rate, which is usually 24 frames per second flat. And anything that is shot at an off speed, you know, anything above or below 24, the lab or the Dailies house will conform. So if I were my own Dailies house, if I had to process that footage, I would conform it to 24 frames per second. Typically, even the cameras will do that. They'll even, you know, there are two columns of metadata, right? There's project FPS and then sensor FPS. So if they're running at 24 FPS, but they're recording in 48, then it'll come out of the camera natively. That's my understanding. I'm not in the camera department, so I don't actually know because I'm not the DIT and I'm not processing that footage. But generally speaking, the footage itself is resped or conformed and then delivered to me. And I've been on projects where they'll speed it up for me and sync it with the audio. I don't prefer that, and I'll tell you why. It messes with the time code, because then they'll deliver two batches of the same clip to me, one that they've resped and one that's been conformed, which actually has the accurate time code. So my preference personally, even though it's more work, is to get the conformed, you know, slow motion footage, apply an Avid time warp effect to it to get it running to speed, sync it up with the production audio, and then create a subclip for the editor to use. That way, when we go to do turnovers down the line, the time code is correct. Otherwise, what would need to get done if you were, you know, doing it the other way, the former, you would need to go back in and overcut all of the footage that, you know, was resped and didn't have the correct time code. So that's how I've handled it in the past. And I think interpret footage is specific to Premiere, if I'm correct. I don't know. Yeah. So I haven't had too much experience working in Premiere professionally. I've used it a lot personally, and I've used Resolve professionally a handful of times on larger projects.
Yeah, I think Resolve has some ways to do that too.
Yeah.
Premiere is a little weird sometimes and not always dependable, but usually works. And in the background, that's the weird part about it.
Well, there's actually, just to that note, I mean, I just saw again at Edit Fest they were doing a demo, and they're adding features really rapidly, and it's very exciting. There was one pain point for me when I was using Resolve, which was that I couldn't make a subsequence, which is the way that I collaborate with others usually, right? The editor will have the reel open, and they'll ask me to do something in that reel. So what I usually do in Avid is I mark an in and an out in the reel in a locked bin. I take a subsequence, I do my work, and then I can use that subsequence. I load it into a source monitor and I cut it back in. I can reverse match frame, find it, cut it back in, and, you know, end of story. And I couldn't do that in Resolve. They just added it, and it's, you know, I'm like, this is great. And I think that and I also think that competition is good. I think that having, you know, all these different NLEs. I mean, I would still consider Final Cut Pro X, or I guess it's now just Final Cut Pro. They dropped the X because it's 11 now. But that was, believe it or not, the first NLE that I learned. I mean, technically it was iMovie 6 HD, and then it was Final Cut Pro 7, and then it was Final Cut Pro 10, because that's what SVA was championing at the time. And so I had cut a feature film in Final Cut Pro 10.3, I think it was, or 10.0.3. I don't remember, but it was, I still think that it is ahead of its time, and there are features in it such as roles that I think are like, again, it really leverages the power of metadata in a way that I hope to see more prominently in other programs.
All right, so we're going to do the last question. So we're going to cut questions off at this point. But going back to Jason's question, he's asking more about the organization of the crew for editing. Um, and so what he's saying is, what if we organize into supervising editor, junior editor, and apprentice rather than editor, first AE, second AE? I'm thinking about it in the lens of DI houses where you have supervising colorists, pre-timers, and color assistants. The only reason he brings it up that way is to openly spread out the creative tasks instead of basic housekeeping, which can be handled by automation, forming a creative team that rather than a creative with assistance, which feels more vague.
Yeah, I know. I think it's an interesting thought. I guess the thing that comes to mind for me is it's interesting because I've operated under this mentality, and I don't I again, I'm not advocating for anyone else to do this, and I don't know. A part of it is maybe because I've never been burned, but I operate under the mentality that the people who need to know will know, right? I think that my work will speak for itself, and I don't think this is directly answering, or I don't know. This is the thing that comes to mind though, and so to that end, I've never really been too concerned with what my title or my credit is. I don't care if I'm a first assistant editor, if I'm an assistant editor, if I'm an associate editor, whatever it is. I mean, in terms of shaping and sculpting a career, it's incredibly important to look out for yourself, which sounds counterintuitive to what I'm saying. But I mean, I'm also talking with the editors that I'm working with about what my goals are, and they know what I'm contributing. And I'm always asking, what can I be doing differently or better? And so if I'm operating at the top of my game, um, I don't really care much about what the title is or what the credit is. And also to that end, even what you see on IMDb isn't necessarily, the whole picture. I mean, there are people who do work behind the scenes or who choose not to list themselves on IMDb or even in the credits of films just because they're trying to craft an image of themselves. And I think that that's totally valid. I mean, there are projects that I've worked on that, I haven't listed myself on IMDb because maybe I was just on them for a short stint. Like there was a project I was on for 6 weeks, and I didn't feel it was fair of me to list myself on IMDb when there was an assistant editor who was on there for a much longer period of time. And I was like, I don't want to detract from the work that they're doing, and I don't feel like I didn't feel like it was earned on my part, if that makes any sense.
Totally makes sense. So, well, we really appreciate it. This has been an excellent session. All right, Chris, is there anything else we need to go over before we wrap up our show here?
That was it. Jared just put it in. He put his website. Um, so that's how everyone can reach Jared besides reading his book, of course. Carl, thank you very much. Jared, fantastic session. What great info.
Thank
And
you.
we'll see everyone in October. Bye-bye.